Do you ever wonder why life throws curveballs just when you think things can't get worse? What if those challenges were actually setting you up for something greater? In today's story, a divine messenger faces impossible choices, heartbreak, and unexpected lessons that will make you question how much control we really have over our lives. Stick around, this tale is full of twists, a little humor, and a powerful message you won't forget. Trust me, you'll want to hear how it all comes together. Once, the god of death sent a trusted messenger to Earth to retrieve the soul of a woman who had just passed away. Dutifully, the messenger descended, ready to fulfill his grim task. Yet, what he found brought a shadow of doubt to his purpose. The woman's lifeless body lay amidst three small girls, triplets, barely clinging to the fragile thread of their young lives. One nursed feebly at her mother's lifeless breast, too young to understand the loss. Another wailed with abandon, her cries piercing the stillness. The third had cried herself into exhaustion, her tear-streaked face resting against her mother's side. They were utterly alone. Their father was long gone, and no one else would step forward to care for them. The messenger froze, his resolve unraveling. The weight of their plight pressed against his immortal heart. Could he truly leave these helpless children to face the world alone? For the first time in his eternal service, he hesitated. Burdened by sorrow and unable to carry out his duty, he returned to the heavens, the woman's soul still bound to earth. When the messenger stood before the god of death, he bowed his head, his voice heavy with emotion. "I couldn't take her soul. Forgive me, my lord, but you don't understand what I saw. There are three tiny, helpless triplets. One clings to her dead mother, still nursing. Another has cried herself into an exhausted sleep. The third wails in despair. My heart could not bear to leave them alone. Please let their mother live, just a little longer, until the girls are old enough to survive on their own. There's no one else to care for them." The god of death listened in silence, his expression darkening with each word. When the messenger finished, the god's voice thundered through the heavens. "Do you presume to know better than I, who wields power over life and death? Do you think your mortal sympathies outweigh the wisdom of the one who governs the universe? Today, you have defied your purpose and committed your first sin." The god's gaze burned with divine fury. "For this, you will be punished. You will return to Earth and remain there until you laugh at your own folly 3 times. Only then will you be allowed to return to the heavens." The messenger bowed his head in acceptance of the punishment, though his heart held firm. He believed his actions were just, driven by compassion, and he could not fathom how he might ever laugh at his own so-called foolishness. In his mind, he had nothing to regret. Banished to Earth, the messenger found himself stranded in the mortal realm. Not far away, a humble cobbler was preparing to journey into the city to purchase warm clothes and blankets for his children. Winter's chill was creeping closer. As the cobbler set off, his sharp eyes caught sight of a figure trembling by the roadside. The man was naked, his skin pale and marked by the cold, none other than the messenger, stripped of his divine essence and cast down among mortals. The cobbler's heart ached for the trembling stranger. He couldn't ignore the man's suffering, so he made a difficult decision. Instead of purchasing clothes for his own children, he bought a warm blanket and sturdy garments for the shivering man. With the stranger still in need of shelter and food, the cobbler invited him home. "Come with me," the cobbler said kindly. "Don't mind if my wife gets angry. I spent the money for our children's clothes on you, so she'll be upset for a while. But she'll cool down in a few days. It's better than leaving you here to freeze." The stranger followed him home, grateful but silent. The cobbler's wife, however, was not so restrained. The moment they stepped inside, she exploded with fury. Her voice rose as she scolded her husband for putting a stranger before their own children. "How could you waste our money like this?" she cried. "Winter is almost here, and now we have nothing for the kids." At this, the messenger burst into laughter, his first since being cast down. The cobbler, stunned, turned to him with wide eyes. "What's so funny?" he asked, his confusion evident. "Why are you laughing?" The messenger smiled but held back an explanation. "I'll tell you everything after I've laughed 3 times, he said calmly. "For now, don't ask me anything." He had laughed because the scene was both ironic and touching. The cobbler's wife, blinded by worry, couldn't see the extraordinary twist her husband's selfless act had brought into their lives. By helping the stranger, the cobbler had unknowingly welcomed a divine being into their home. Though she focused only on what had been lost, the money for their children's winter clothes, she couldn't yet see what was coming, a future overflowing with blessings and joy. The messenger, observing the cobbler's struggles and his wife's outbursts, began to understand something profound. Humans are often trapped in the immediacy of their struggles, unable to see the larger story unfolding. In that moment, the messenger recognized the first glimmer of his own folly. Perhaps he, too, had been blind to the grand design. As time passed, the messenger immersed himself in the cobbler's craft. His divine nature lent him unmatched skill, and the shoes he made became works of art, beautiful, sturdy, and perfectly fitted. Word spread quickly, and customers from distant towns came seeking his creations. The cobbler's fortunes changed dramatically. His once humble shop grew prosperous, and his family's hardships faded into memory. One day, the cobbler's thriving business attracted a servant from the king's palace. The man approached with reverence, carrying a roll of exquisite rare leather. "This leather is unlike any other," the servant said solemnly. "The king desires a pair of shoes made from it. Only shoes, not sandals. Take care to fulfill his request perfectly." In those days, a peculiar tradition was followed in some regions. The dead were buried wearing sandals, never shoes. The cobbler, well aware of this custom, pulled the messenger aside and spoke firmly. "Listen carefully. The servant was clear. You are to make shoes, not sandals. There's only enough leather for 1 pair, and if there's a mistake, the king's wrath will be unforgiving. Don't take any chances." The messenger nodded, but for reasons even he couldn't fully explain, ended up crafting sandals instead of shoes. When the cobbler saw the finished work, his face turned pale with dread. Fury and panic boiled over as he stormed toward the messenger. "You've doomed us both," he shouted. "How could you make sandals when I warned you again and again? Do you have any idea what you've done?" The messenger, rather than defending himself, burst into laughter, the second time since being cast down. His carefree amusement left the cobbler dumbfounded. "Why are you laughing now?" the cobbler demanded. "Do you think this is funny?" Before the cobbler could vent his frustration further, the king's servant burst into the workshop, breathless and frantic. "Stop everything," he exclaimed. "The king has passed away. Make sandals instead of shoes." The cobbler froze in disbelief, the weight of the moment sinking in. He turned slowly to the messenger, his anger replaced by astonishment. "You knew, didn't you?" he murmured. Dropping to his knees, he begged for forgiveness. "I doubted you. Please forgive me." The messenger gave him a kind smile. "There's nothing to forgive. You did nothing wrong. I'm just fulfilling my punishment." He had laughed because the situation revealed an eternal truth. No one can truly predict the future. Humans worry, make plans, and hold tightly to their desires, but life has its own way of unfolding. The cobbler's panic over the sandals had been unnecessary, just as the messenger's initial despair over the triplets now seemed misplaced. Reflecting on the little girls, he understood that life had already charted a course for them, and his worry had served no purpose. A few days later, the cobbler's shop bustled with new visitors. 3 elegant young women entered, their faces glowing with joy. They were there to order shoes for their upcoming weddings, accompanied by an older, wealthy woman. The messenger, busy at the back of the shop, froze as soon as he saw them. He recognized them immediately. They were the triplets he had once left behind with their lifeless mother. Unable to contain his curiosity, the messenger approached the older woman and asked gently, "Can you tell me about these young women? How did they come to be in your care?" The woman smiled warmly, her eyes soft with memory. "These girls aren't my biological daughters," she explained. "Years ago, I found them as babies, helpless and alone. Their mother had passed away while trying to nurse them, and there was no one left to care for them. I had no children of my own, so I took them in, raised them as my own, and gave them the life they deserved. They grew up surrounded by love and wealth. Now, all 3 are about to marry into a royal family." The messenger's heart swelled with a mixture of relief and wonder. The triplets' futures, once so uncertain, had unfolded in ways even he couldn't have imagined. Upon hearing the woman's story, the messenger couldn't help but laugh, a deep, genuine laugh, his third and final one. The sound startled everyone in the shop, drawing curious glances. Turning to the cobbler, the messenger began to speak, his voice filled with humility and understanding. "I was wrong," he admitted. "Fate is far greater than any of us can comprehend. We humans, and even I, a divine being, see only what's directly in front of us. But the grand design, the bigger picture, is always beyond our reach. My worry, my defiance, my doubts, they were born of foolishness." He paused, his eyes kind but resolute. "I've laughed at my own foolishness 3 times now, and my punishment is complete. It's time for me to return home, wiser and more humble than before." With that, the messenger bid farewell to the cobbler, his family, and the triplets, who stood marveling at the man they had unknowingly been connected to since their infancy. As he ascended back to the heavens, his heart carried the lessons he had learned: compassion, patience, and trust in the unseen paths that life carves for all. The moral of this story is a gentle reminder that life's events often unfold in ways we cannot foresee, and worrying about the future rarely changes what is meant to be. In the midst of our struggles, it's natural to focus on immediate problems, feeling as though they overshadow everything. Yet, what might seem like a devastating setback can often be part of a greater plan we're not yet able to comprehend. Take, for instance, personal hardships like a rocky relationship, a financial crisis, or health challenges. In those moments, it's easy to feel overwhelmed and question, "Why is this happening to me?" But over time, these very struggles often shape us into stronger, wiser versions of ourselves. They teach us patience, nurture resilience, and uncover inner strengths we didn't know we possessed. Sometimes, the hardest moments are stepping stones to blessings we couldn't have imagined. Just as the messenger couldn't foresee how the orphan triplets would grow into joyful, prosperous young women despite their tragic start, we too struggle to see beyond life's difficulties. Yet, it's often these very challenges that pave the way for personal growth or open doors to opportunities we never imagined possible. This story reminds us to trust the flow of life. It encourages patience and faith in the unseen threads of a larger design. Even when life feels overwhelming or unfair, we are reminded that hardships often have a purpose, one that becomes clear only with time. Things happen for a reason, even when the reason remains hidden in the moment.